Welcome to Tell Me More, the Allsteel podcast where design meets innovation and we explore the limitless potential of workspaces. In this exclusive series, we're peeling back the layers of workplace design. From the psychology of colors to the future of hybrid work, join us as we open doors to conversations with industry leaders, architects, and designers who redefine the modern workplace. This is Tell Me More, brought to you by Allsteel, because when it comes to designing the future, there's always more to discover.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Tell Me More podcast. I am Madison Gentry, Sales Enablement Manager for Architectural Products here at Allsteel, and I'm being joined today by Maya Johnson and Melissa Rudolph from EUA Wisconsin. Today, we're going to have an interesting conversation, explore the world of demountable walls, which here at Allsteel, we think of demountable walls as the physical embodiment of Allsteel's living in beta principle, which we'll explore a little bit today. But it offers a clear and more sustainable alternative to conventional construction. We're seeing that as workplace trends increasingly favor flexible spaces and sustainable choices, demountable walls stand out as a unique choice that addresses both of those design goals. So we'll dive into that conversation today. But before we get started, I would like to have both my peers introduce themselves. Tell us a bit about who you are, the important work that you do. So to kick it over, we'll start with Maya. Do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having us, Madison. We're excited to be here today and have this conversation with you. So, like Madison said, my name is Maya Johnson, and I'm an interior designer at EUA based out of our Madison office. And I focus on the design and implementation of healthcare environments here. I work with our clients to learn who they are, what their brand is, or what their brand is becoming, to design spaces that embody their unique stories and the communities they serve. I believe by listening to and visioning with our clients, we are able to create thoughtful spaces that provide a connected sense of place, familiarity, and connection to community that contributes to successful patient outcomes and the retention of staff talents.
Thank you, Maya. And she's right. She's pretty awesome. She tells a really great story when it comes to the interior design. My name is Melissa Rudolph. I'm here at the Milwaukee office, and I am a senior project manager in the healthcare studio, but I've actually had other experiences in our other markets, such as in schools and multifamily. I love what I do. I like getting a group of people together and we can become like this family as a project progresses from its inception to the end, and usually try to find a way to solve a problem that seems impossible at the time and getting everybody's feedback and things.
That's beautiful. Thank you, you guys. I think what stands out to me with both of your introductions is just how much you put the person at the forefront of what you do, which I think is really inspiring and beautiful, making sure that as we solve these important challenges, that we are putting the users that we're solving for at the forefront of everything that we do. So I'm excited to dive a little bit more into that today. So with that in mind, demountable walls. What are they? What are they often referred to? We hear demountable walls also referred to in the market as interior partitions, demountable partitions, architectural products, modular partitions. There's so many different names for them, but they all roughly refer to the same thing. What's really important to note, though, about demountable walls is the major impacts that they have to the work that we do and to the sustainability measures that we're trying to go after, especially against conventional construction. So some of those advantages could look like they expedite construction. They have minimal impact to the building shell. They have significant tax advantages over conventional construction. But there is also a remarkable sustainability story in terms of landfill waste and carbon reductions, which we'll dive into a little bit more today. For demountable walls specifically, there's usually two different families that they fall into. They could either fall into a stick-built system, which is a built on-site system, usually consisting of trim or glass, and it really is up to the installers to build that on site. Then there's a unitized system, which is mainly coming out of the manufacturer as a unitized panel, and then they're assembled together on site. Think of like Legos coming together in pieces on site. both have their advantages and both have their unique characteristics about them, but that's most often how demountable walls are seen in the market. With that in mind, Maya and Melissa, tell us a little bit about your experience that you've had with demountable walls. How did it go? What did you learn? Would you use them again, and why? Go ahead and kick us off here, Melissa.
I would have to say this project that I'm thinking of was a healthcare clinic, and it was my first demountable system, not first to EUA, but first to me. And one of the things that I learned fairly quickly is that with the details in the walls, you're able to pick up on the product pretty quickly. And working as a team, I think, the pre-planning effort is probably one of the most important pieces. And then getting the right players to the table at that time for the pre-planning. What was unique about this particular project was that they did a mock-up prior to even us laying out any of the spaces. And I think that really helped, at least in my mind, understand the product and how it went together and how we could then turn that into a set of drawings for which the demountable partitions were built to. And I think what made this one a little bit also unique was that it was for an exam room. And so there was the plumbing aspect added to it more so than just, let's say, like an office or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. So Melissa and I had the opportunity to work together on the project that she's describing. I also had the chance to do a couple of other clinic projects with different demountable systems. They've all been pretty interesting and unique, and I would say some of the pros kind of rise to the top for this conversation across the cross-section of our clients that have been interested in it. As well as some of the question marks that they had or reservations, because I think demountable wall systems are becoming more and more of a topic of discussion for us, and a lot of times in our healthcare market, but in other markets that our other design teams serve here at EUA. So it's been really interesting to get to know sort of the question marks, and like Melissa said, having access to a mock-up was invaluable for our client to get to see how it worked. We were able to work through all of the kinks ahead of time so that once the pieces got to site, it was built exactly as they were envisioning, and there really wasn't any rework or things that, subtle things are lessons learned every time that we're doing an iteration of something, but there were no giant question marks going into the actual install, which was incredible.
And I even think like the different skins that you could add to it added some of that flexibility. Not only can it, on the outside, you can look to see that something was more traditional, but then on the inside, if you did the magnets, which in this case we did the metal walls, we were able to install accessories very simply with just a magnet that kind of held string together and helped with the tampering of those pieces.
Absolutely. And you speak about flexibility, Madison, earlier on, and this is a very simple method of flexibility, but I think important for this client, where if their medical equipment changes down the road, it's just as simple as swapping out the magnets and putting in a new piece of equipment that they can serve their patients. So that was an awesome feature for this client, the metal walls for this system.
No, I think you guys are touching on some really important points here, especially the flexibility that you're talking about. And not only flexibility in the product, but flexibility in the design of the product too. Like you're mentioning that you could have veneer or laminate or some other finish on the outside, but on the inside, we can change that interior finish or that interior capability of the product to maybe have different collaboration tools on the inside or whatnot to support that end user's goals. Something that really sticks out to me about what you guys are mentioning though is the process and how it adjusts when you're working with demountable walls versus conventional construction. And I think this is something that it's important for us to dive into, because the process, while through our studies have shown that the overall construction schedule reduces by about 36% when we use demountable walls versus conventional construction, it's important to note that while that reduction is there, proper planning is crucial to using demountable walls. So talk to me a little bit about that. How did you guys have to have a mindset shift when you started using demountable walls versus conventional?
Well, luckily, with Maya mentioning that she had previous discussions, and I think we had presentation on it. It was just the pre-planning was the most important. So knowing the client wanted to go this direction, I knew that up front. And so I kind of pushed for that on my end and trying to get all the different players from the design consultants from mechanical, electrical, plumbing, as well as having the contractor on board early really did help. And one of the things, even though it was like it seemed like a longer process, it was very helpful. Once they got the prefabrication drawings done, we were able to sit down as a team and go through that and finally do the final details that we needed to do. We're at the point where the construction had to meet the demountable partitions, and so that seemed flawlessly. And in fact, I didn't get any RFIs in the field, so that was helping for that.
I would say no RFIs is a huge win.
We sat on that part.
Absolutely. I would say it seemed to me like having the contractor on board from the beginning too was really key because they were orchestrating everything on site along with your team. So having all of those pieces in place and how the system's interfacing with some traditional construction components, such as the flooring installation and the ceiling installation, and how that all interfaces together, figuring out even those details and how the system interfaces with portions of traditional construction was super helpful for us on site.
That makes complete sense. I mean, some of the things that I've heard coming out of our install teams or the general contractors that we often work with is that the scheduling of the different trades that are coming to site has to fluctuate a little bit when it comes to demountable walls, because things like flooring, finish flooring throughout the whole space, then the demountable walls come in. Whereas previously, you would maybe have the flooring come in after the conventional walls are put in. So there's these subtle changes in the overall process that can impact the schedule and I guess just the efficiency of the job. So it's interesting to have this conversation. Maya, from your side of things, how do demountable walls help or maybe even hinder your design process? And how do you have to switch the way that you do things, especially when you think of drawing through details or how you spend your time and things like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's a little bit different from project to project that I've had the opportunity to work with the demountable system. For the project that Melissa and I worked with together, we were really looking to match our clients' brand standards. And the flexibility that we're describing in the system itself, but also in the design of the system was really crucial because we wanted it to really feel like it was part of their brand, part of their environments that they're producing from project to project with a little bit of a twist. They're identifying unique and special elements to each individual branch or each individual clinic that they're building. So having the flexibility to be able to do a custom or to match an existing brand was really key for that client. I've also had the opportunity to work with a client where we were kind of starting over. We were creating a brand from scratch. And so having a multitude of different options and capabilities within the wall system, like, oh, let's put an embedded monitor here, or we would love a glass panel here in addition to the wall system, was also incredible for us to have the flexibility to add specialty uses into their new clinic that they were kind of starting from the ground up. And it felt very state of the art to them to be able to drive that design and add special touches that wouldn't have been possible or would have been a little bit more challenging with a traditional construction model.
Yeah, I totally get that. But again, coming back to that same word that keeps coming up, that flexibility within the product, I think is crucial here. Melissa, on your side of things from project coordination and project management, how do you find that your conversations with the general contractor or the end user change when you're going from conventional construction to demountable walls? Do you have to walk them through certain parts of the process in greater detail? Do you find that you have to explain things to them in a different way, or maybe like you haven't had to before to get them to understand? You guys mentioned that the mock-ups were key to the success of some of the projects that you've worked on. How did being able to see the product and see how flexible it was help you to coordinate and manage the project better with somebody that maybe isn't as familiar with demountable walls?
That's a great question. I kind of feel like with the mock-up, it was so easy. So because you could pick up and move things around and you were standing in there. And a lot of times when you do the conventional, like I just finished up a different project that did choose to go conventionally. And what we had to do is not only we did a 3D model, and even though we put the space goggles on and you're in there and you can touch things, it wasn't like, I don't feel like the stakeholders or the end users quite got what they were seeing because of the technology. But when you have a physical space and you can pick things up, and I think that helps a lot with the planning portion of it. And as far as like questions that we got from the field were more so on like the flooring and the loveliness of the floor, and then how the top of the panel attached to the ceiling and the placement of the lighting within those within the grid, because both those things were in place prior to the partitions coming on site. And so I think those were really where the questions focused, not so much on the space itself. And again, with the mock-up, it was really easy to translate that to the field, to where we placed all the different pieces and accessories for the exam rooms.
Sure. No, it makes sense. So then when you guys have worked with these demountable walls, it sounds like for the most part, correct me if I'm wrong, but for the most part that it has kind of eased some of these maybe coordination efforts that you've had, because you can, if you are effectively pre-planning for them and having these pre-planning meetings with your general contractor, your end user, you all kind of know what to expect when it comes on to site. With that in mind, let's talk about the other side of this. What are some things that you ran into with demountable walls that were a learning curve for you? You're like, oh, that didn't quite work out the way that I thought it was going to. Maybe talk about these sides that you think to yourself, I'm going to have to plan better for that the next time I use demountable walls, or talk about demountable walls where they're at currently in their product development. They don't quite function for this need that I need them to. So this is where I usually go back to conventional construction. Maya, do you want to kick us off with that one?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So something that comes to mind for me in project type is a lot of times we need pretty intense STC ratings in our healthcare projects, and that becomes a little bit of a challenge. I know for the clinics that we worked with or have worked on with demountable construction, we're not as concerned about hitting the STC ratings that you might need in a more high-intensive hospital setting, but that is certainly a conversation, is the acoustics and figuring that out. So we worked with an acoustician on your team to help supplement the wall system with noise, or white noise rather. And so that was helpful to have a resource to be able to help us implement that. On the other projects that I've worked on, we spent a lot of time looking at the details for how the ceiling was connecting to the demountable wall itself, and if there was any way that we could minimize the gap, or, not maybe just simply having a gasket between the ceiling or the ceiling grid and the room next door, and what that looks like. So I think the acoustics, at least for the projects that I've worked on, has certainly been maybe not a hindrance. I think maybe for some of those more high intensity healthcare projects, it certainly can be, but just more of a conversation and a learning curve for sure, and figuring out how that's all going to work.
I would agree with that. I think the privacy aspect of it was really prevalent in this project, and not only because the way that the space laid out, we had the exam rooms on the outside and then a teamwork area on the inside, and so that it was one, how do you get privacy to the teamwork, and then not overhearing conversations with the patient inside the room. So that became really important. And I think one of the other things, Maya, that we had done was researched a little bit on the ceiling type. I think we ended up putting something that was ahead of higher NRC, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was a very high NRC and CAC ceiling tile, which really helped.
I'm going to completely geek out now, because now the conversation's taking a turn of where I get really passionate about this. So acoustics is obviously a huge conversation when it comes to demountable walls. And I think that there is this impression in the market that by going with a demountable wall solution, you on occasion have to sacrifice your acoustics. And there's been so many advancements that have been made to demountable walls to get, like you said, Maya, those higher STC ratings and whatnot. But there are on occasion going to be environments that a demountable wall solution or a traditional conventional wall is not going to solve for, but going with more of a built solution that has maybe higher insulation and whatnot inside of it can get us to those higher STC ratings. So there's certain environments that just call for that level of product or insulation or whatnot to achieve those STC ratings. But we are having a lot of conversations with our clients and with our general contractors that we're working with, as well as other A&D firms, about acoustics and how do you holistically plan for a sound acoustical solution. And we keep coming back to not only the ABCs of acoustics, so absorb, block, and cover. Absorb would be like, your PET felt panels or your acoustical tiles within the room. Block would be your demountable walls. Cover would be your sound masking or your white noise that you had mentioned, Maya. But we also talk about it as holistic solutioning, that your demountable walls are only covering 4 sides of a 6-sided cube. And what's happening at that floor condition or that ceiling condition can really make or break how successful we think a space is in terms of acoustics. So talk to me a little bit about that and the conversations that you've had with your clients and using demountable walls. What did you have to plan for when it comes to your flooring condition or your ceiling conditions to be aware of the acoustics? And how did conversations such as taking walls to the deck versus keeping them down influence these conversations? Because these are things that we often come across of, if the walls weren't taken to deck or the ceiling or, whatnot, and then the demountable walls come in, that sound is just skipping over that interior wall from space to space. So talk to me a little bit about that and the acoustical conversations you've had with your general contractors or your end users.
So I can speak a little bit about a conversation that I had with a client about taking the walls to deck. And I think for us, it was something that we explored with a particular client, but we had it priced out and it just became a matter of financial concern to bring the demountable system to deck. And that was several years ago. So I know every time we have a new conversation about a demountable system, there's more and more and more advances on the market, which is incredible to see because like I mentioned earlier, I think everybody's getting more and more curious about these systems and how that can really benefit their speed to market and flexibility within their space. But for this particular project several years ago, it ended up being a hindrance to try to bring the clinic walls to deck. And also just the discussion with the amount of penetrations happening above the ceiling was also a concern because some of that sound would still be able to penetrate through the space. So we ended up forgoing it in that particular project and really focus on the detailing of the wall to ceiling relationship and the strength of that ceiling tile and how also the insulation or the intensity of the insulation, I should say, between the walls and within the actual demountable partitions itself. So paying attention to what we could control within that environment and not breaking the bank for that client.
I really do think that the sound masking system does help with some of that concern. So you just have that low vibration that kind of obviously mask other sound or kind of muffle the sound between like the patient talking to the doctor or the nurses working in the workstations that are beyond. I do believe we talked about having the walls go up a little bit higher and then maybe even putting insulation on top of the ceiling, but that went by the wayside rather quickly because we found that with the gasket that hit the ceiling grid ended up being a little bit better as far as a sound detail than maybe taking the walls up a little bit higher, putting that bad insulation on top of the ceiling.
No, this is super interesting because, I think this is something where it comes back to the proper planning and conversation around these things prior to the specification of the walls becomes really, really important because to your point, Maya, we all have to work within budgets and how are we going to work within this budget and still satisfy the client's need to stay within that budget, but also give them or at least talk with them about their perception of the level of acoustics that they need and how to achieve a solution for that. And there's many different avenues that we can take. It just requires having those upfront conversations to really dive into that and figure it out. To your point, Melissa, about the sound masking, we did this really interesting exercise in our Chicago showroom where we had a client sit just outside of a conference room that we had within the space. The door was open in the conference room and we shut off the sound masking in that area. it was so drastic when the sound masking goes off because it almost feels as if your ears like pop a little because the lack of noise feels so loud. It seems crazy to say that, but it feels so, so loud. So I think the importance of really solving for the A, B, and C of acoustics in a space is something that, you know, having these upfront conversations becomes really important to achieve that level of acoustical consideration. So
I was going to say, I think what's also been awesome with these conversations, and like you said, having those upfront conversations has been critical for us. But I feel like we haven't been met with, oh no, we can't do that, or we can't figure this out. We have worked with the various teams that have provided demountable systems to really work through these solutions, and your team included. It was a conversation. It wasn't like a here's our system. It's definitely not like a out of the box, here you go. It was let's figure this out and try to make this the best that we can for the client and workshop it. Melissa, it looks like you were maybe going to say something.
Basically, I think what the key part to the success of this project was that there's buy-in from day one from everybody, not only from the client, but from the contractor and then our MEP design partners and obviously Maya and myself.
it makes complete sense, and it makes my heart happy knowing that that's how you've been met from, you know, our teams as well as other demountable wall manufacturers, that it's a let's solve this together, let's figure this out together approach. Because like you said, it makes no sense to offer a product and say, well, take it or leave it, you know. Like there has to be some back and forth there. I'm gonna switch gears a little bit and talk to you about the sustainability side of things, which seems to be such a big conversation in our industry right now. Without thinking about demountable walls quite yet, just thinking in the realm of sustainability in general, how are you guys experiencing the increasing sustainability requirements or certifications or whatnot that maybe your clients are recommending that they do for their project? Or you guys at EUA have decided as a company, you're going to try to design or manage projects in this way to be more sustainable. How are you seeing those conversations increase or that dialogue change over the last couple of years? Melissa, maybe do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, so here at our EUA, we have a lot of initiatives that we have within the firm, and one of them is the 2030 challenge, and that is pledging to make the environment impact by focusing kind of on energy performance in our architectural designs. And then the other one, which I think Maya might know a little bit more about, is that we're part of the materials pledge. And so we have a very big focus here at UA for sustainability and try to bring that into our projects as many ways as possible, not only from like the energy impact, but then the carbon reduction and all sustainable materials. And so we try to, in the design, we bring that up at the beginning of a project with the client to say, hey, what are your goals? And you don't need to actually spend a lot of money to be sustainable. You can do it in these small ways. You don't necessarily have to get certified, but the certification is nice, but there are ways that we can still make an impact to the environment, and we try to challenge and bring those up to the forefront during the design process. If you want to add a little bit more to that.
Yeah, that was a great overview. But like Melissa said, we really try to do this inherently as part of what we do here at EUA. It's a service that our clients are provided, whether or not they necessarily know it. So as part of our 2030 AIA materials pledge, we did a complete design library, we call it design lab here at EUA, overhaul last summer, where we brought all of our reps in and met with them and shared with them that we were pursuing this or are joining on to be part of the pledge, and rethought our design labs and maybe took out some materials that weren't kind of meeting the standards that we were hoping to bring to our clients inherently, like I was saying, as well as taking a look at our specifications and kind of our baseline specifications for all projects, ensuring that we're not putting anything out into the world that we strongly do not believe in. So I think we are taking strides as a team here to make it part of what we do. We also have a sustainability team here as well who keep us on track. And we are also working on a couple of lead projects. So they really help us with tracking all of our points and making sure that we're going to meet that lead credential, whatever level is decided on a given project.
So when you guys are thinking through product procurement or who you're deciding to partner with for furniture, HVAC, all of these different things. What are some of the things that you look for in who you partner with? Maybe it's, that you guys at EUA have decided to focus on reduction of landfill waste and carbon emissions, or you're really focused on renewable energy. What are those criteria that you ask your partners to meet or at least have an open conversation with you about in terms of sustainability?
Of course, I don't know all the technical pieces to it, right? I just basically we look to see if they're FSC certified, or what are their specs? Are they doing the cradle to grave? Are what are their emissions? We look at what waste, how much is recycled, and things like that, and try to partner with those companies that have the same like-mindedness when it comes to sustainability. I know Maya's really well versed in some of the materials that we use as far as like even carpet or flooring and things like that. And I think that really helps that we have that kind of baseline understanding and going out and asking those that we do partner with, hey, this is our goal. Join us and join us on the train ride to the end here.
Some software too, especially with our materials, that can help us compare and contrast materials too. So we're comparing apples to apples, but I mean, maybe not so if somebody has a lot of carbon emissions versus maybe a better competitor on the market. We could encourage our clients to move in that direction and partner with those manufacturers that are aligned with our goals here as well.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, a conversation here that, at H&I and Allsteel, it's been for a very long time, sustainability is at the forefront of, everything that we do. And particularly in the architectural products category, our product manager is very passionate about finding new ways that we can make sure that our product is as sustainable as it can be. And if we notice any areas that are potential gaps or ways that, or items that we could be better about, those are put on our project plan to make sure that we're marching towards them. And one area that we did this last year is receiving declare labels for our full architectural products category. For anyone that's not familiar with what a declare label is, it's basically, if you look at the side of a cereal box or your graham cracker box, you get those nutrition facts, and it's a breakdown of all of the different components within it down to the percentage level. It's the same thing, but for building products. And that declare label, there's 3 different levels of it. Our declare labels are Red List approved. And it was just, it was a good gut check for us on fully understanding everything that's in our product. And we had some findings too, where we were like, oh, if we can't say what that is, well, then nobody else can either. And that's a problem for us. So we're going to go through the testing to figure out what that product is, and then maybe make some changes to our product so that some of those red list chemicals are not present there. So that was our first step. It was very interesting as we were going through this exercise, how often we started to hear about it more in market. So not to say that Allsteel is doing anything new or revolutionary, but I think there's this global consensus of we all need to be better about this, and we're all tracking towards being better about this. So another thing that we did to try and further push ourselves to understand where we're at is we did a life cycle assessment for our Beyond product category. That life cycle assessment took it all the way from the raw extraction of materials to the end product and, through the life cycle of it being in use and what happens when it's no longer in use. And we studied all of those different areas. We found that the Beyond system demonstrated a 56% lower global warming potential upon initial installation, which was wild to me because you can expect that with a reconfigurable wall, a wall that can move around as you need it to, it's going to reduce, global warming potential and landfill waste over the course of its life. But at initial installation, due to the way that we manufacture our products, the inherent recyclability of the materials that we use, so think about recycling aluminum, there's specialty recycling for glass, this resulted in a 56% lower global warming potential, which was remarkable. And after just 5 reconfigurations, that went up to 68%, which we were really excited about to hear that this is the impact that using a demountable wall system can have on your project. Additionally, if we focus on solid waste, we noticed that after the first reconfiguration, the system produced 29% less solid waste. And we know that in the building industry, we are one of the largest, if not the largest contributor to landfill waste ever. It seems horrible to say, but we are a huge contributor. these small wins like this really start to stack up. And with this global consensus that we're all having about needing to be more sustainable, these small wins are going to keep adding up. So this is something that is really exciting for me to hear from you guys, that you are thinking the same things. Your general contractors are thinking the same things. Your clients are thinking the same things. And while the process that we take to getting to that better result may be different, especially if we're focusing on different areas, carbon reduction, landfill, renewable energy, it's all a conversation that we're having, which I think is a really beautiful thing. One thing about Beyond that brings us up is the idea of a reconfigurable product, a wall that can move around at a grand scale. Maybe we're remodeling our whole floor and we need to go from 15 conference rooms to 12 because we have to add more huddles or touchdowns or whatnot, whatever it may be. That's a large scale remodel. But it could be something as simple as, I have to remove this wall between 2 touchdowns because I need an additional conference room, or I have to add an outlet in this room because we noticed that it didn't have quite as many outlets. These small scale changes. How often are these conversations coming up with your clients?
Sure. As far as the healthcare market, I feel like that it's slow to come to fruition. I think it'd be more prevalent in like a clinic kind of setting versus like a hospital per se. But I can really see this in urgent cares and doctors' offices and things like that. Especially since when you come down to it, the exam rooms are very modular, and to pick those up and reconfigure them, or to make something like, hey, I need to take the wall out in the middle and make a treatment room. I think within the Beyond system, that would be a very flexible and easy thing to do, and make a change to that. And one of the things I think we talked about way earlier in the conversation was that in spaces that healthcare or even offices lease, you can pick it up and take it with you. And I think that was one of the advantages that this particular clinic or the healthcare system used for this clinic, because they are in a lease, and who knows if it's a long-term lease or if the lease is up, they can take all those pieces and move it into a new and reconfigure it. And I think that was very appealing to them, which to me also adds to the flexibility and to the sustainability of the product.
That is definitely feedback I've heard from the project that we use the Beyond Wall system with, as well as the other clients I've worked with. They've all been in leases, and that's been a strange common thread, but one throughout the projects that I've worked on. And it's so appealing to be able to take what you've purchased with you and make use of it in another space, if for whatever reason the space that you're in is no longer serving you. So that is hugely important. And if they're taking it with them and reusing it again, that's, I mean, head over heels better than starting fresh. But also I've had conversations with our clients too, like technology is constantly changing, and where we have power and data and monitors and even med gases in a head wall, if they're able to just take out a panel, have that reconfigured, redesigned, and brought back to site and switched out kind of at a moment's notice, that is one of the most appealing things to our healthcare specific clients, is that they can easily swap out a panel and they do not have to wholesale change a room or rebuild a wall. And
or shut down their systems, like, right, and not have bring in the patients and the dollars that come with that. So, yeah. Great point.
No, it makes complete sense. The dust and debris that's created from, having to tear down and rebuild, or just the disruption to the individuals that are working within that space, having that reconfigurability within the panel greatly helps us.
But like I said before, it's slow to the healthcare, but we're between Maya and I, we'll probably, hey, look at this. This is what this can do, right?
And the dust and debris, like you mentioned, Madison, I think that's another great point to touch on, is that we talk about LEED and other certifications, but WELL is one that we also study as a company and have used with several of our clients. And so the welfare and the wellness of those inhabiting each of our spaces that we use across all of our market types is important too. So if we've got dust and debris on site, or we're renovating and then that dust is through all of the HVAC, that's certainly something to consider too for a dust-free renovation or installation, and how that contributes to the health and the air quality immediately of those using the space is also something to think about as well.
I think I'm just like geeking out over here because I love having these conversations with people. To close this out, I want to get some parting thoughts from you both. What are some trends that you guys are seeing or conversations that are keep coming up with your clients, questions they are asking? And I'm going to open it up. Maybe it's in the realm of sustainability. Maybe it's in the realm of wanting to be more flexible or agile. Or maybe you're like, oh, if demountable walls could just do this, this would solve a lot of things for me. Go ahead and give me some of your parting thoughts there. Maya, do you want to start us off?
Sure. Something that comes to mind that I don't know that we talked a ton about, a little bit, but is speed to market. I think the construction industry, at least from my perspective, we keep getting faster and faster, and construction and technology and life keeps getting more complicated. So having the ability to provide a solution that can be precise and implemented faster than traditional construction is certainly something that is a great resource to have and an option for clients who may need that, and ones who may need to turn a space around really fast and continue to service whoever the market type is, whether it's patients or students or beyond. I think that is something that we're having a lot of conversations about, is how can we keep up with the increased pace of life and the increased pace of construction? And this is certainly a solution that we're looking at for an answer to that question.
I think a lot of things that I'm hearing about is the ability to prefabricate and bring things kind of built to the site. I think that is a forefront to a lot of owners and clients, is that not having the construction done in their space and reducing some of the, like you said, the dust and the time that comes to that. But I think the prefabrication portion is becoming, I'm hearing more and more about that.
No, I agree. Save time, save money, save headache on your guys' part as much as we can, at least.
So Melissa's happy as a project manager.
Yep, there you go.
Especially Melissa, yes. Lots of calls from site.
Yep.
0 RFIs, yeah.
0 RFIs and great production. One of the things that what we didn't touch upon was that just on the matter of the way that we detail our drawings, there's less time that we're spending on doing that because of the system that's in place, and that's a component. I think that's very helpful in us, because then we can concentrate on making sure everybody is marching to the same direction and getting the construction done on time and in budget. So that is very helpful to us.
Oh, it's a great point. Yeah. To let a different team, maybe it's the manufacturer, maybe it's the dealer that you're working with, have them detail it out and you guys approve it, rather than, putting that level of effort on your individual teams to detail out every single interior partition and detail of the glass to the wall, to the windows,
Exactly.
No, I think this has been a really wonderful conversation. I'm so inspired by you both, and I want to say thank you for joining me today in this conversation around demountable walls and our industry at large. I think things are moving so fast and we're noticing so much change. And to your point, Maya, we have less and less and less time to do things, making sure that all of us stay connected and have these very just blunt and honest conversations, I feel like, are really effective. So I want to thank you again, both of you, for being here today. I want to thank our listeners for listening into the Allsteel Tell Me More podcast, and make sure you guys stay tuned in for additional episodes coming soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of another fascinating episode of Tell Me More. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of design and innovation. If you're hungry for more insights and stories, make sure to subscribe to Tell Me More on your preferred podcast platform. As we sign off, remember that the conversation doesn't end here. Connect with us on social media at Allsteel and share your thoughts, questions, or even your favorite moments from the podcast. We love hearing from our engaged and curious audience. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll continue exploring the Design to Do More philosophy. Until then, thanks for listening.